22nd at 7:01 p.m. And we're in special session. And we will be doing our reading some ordinances for third reading, second reading, and we also have a resolution to pass tonight. So it's a little bit different structure. We don't have the normal communications or reports or announcements. And this is our last meeting before the July recess for council members. So the next meeting will be August 3rd. Our first item of business is establishing a quorum and all members of council are present. We now have ordinances for third reading. 6920 is an ordinance authorizing the 2020 street paving and repairs project number 333 and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Katsas.
President Nisley, thank you. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 06920.
Second.
We have a second from Councilmember Clodfelter.
Thank you. And I would just quickly mention this is for our annual street paving, which includes a list of streets this year. $300,000 is going to be appropriated towards this project in the fall time is when this usually happens. The streets include Applegate, Lamar, Longview Heights, Mulligan, Playground Drive, Pomeroy Road, Richland Avenue, South Schaefer. Now, not the full length of all of those streets, but sections of those will be up for street rehabilitation under this paving project.
Okay. So we have a motion and second for approval of ordinance 6920. Any comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying, oh, wait a minute. Do you have a question, Councilmember Clodfelter?
Yes, I'm just curious. So many people were sort of complaining about the construction on Richland Avenue in the past years. Do you know if this paving project for Richland Avenue would take a long time?
My understanding that this is going to cover the roundabout, so it's repaving around the roundabout. Actually, this comes at a good time due to the other construction that's happening with the pedestrian passageway. So it's a good time, both because we have less traffic in that area, and also just kind of to readdress that area after the trucks have kind of moved out.
That sounds good.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Mayor Patterson.
Just a comment to Councilmember Clodfelter's question. It shouldn't take long at all to get that section done.
Good.
Along there. It's milling and paving.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 7020 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a partnership agreement with the Athens County Commissioners as applicant and grantee, if funded, for submission of an application to the Office of Community Development, Ohio Development Services Agency, for the program year 2020, Community Housing Impact and Preservation Program, known as the CHIP program. This is introduced by Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Nisley. And I need to make a motion to amend this ordinance.
Second. We have a second from Councilmember Rising.
Thank you. And the amendment is necessary because we have a time issue that we were unaware of when this ordinance was originally introduced. Can you hear me? I've got a fan just kicked on. So, okay. And we need to add an emergency clause to allow this ordinance to go into effect immediately so that the contract can be signed on the 24th of June. So the ordinance as amended will read, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a partnership agreement with the Athens County Commissioners as applicant and grantee if funded for submission of an application to the Office of Community Development, Ohio Development Services Agency for program year 2020 Community Housing Impact and Preservation Program and declaring an emergency. And Section 1, the mayor is hereby authorized to enter into a partnership agreement with the Athens County Commissioners as applicant and grantee if funded, a copy of which is attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference. That last phrase is an amendment for submission of an application to the Office of Community Development, Ohio Development Services Agency for the fiscal year 2020 Community Housing and Impact Preservation Program grant. And section 2, we're adding that this is an emergency measure in order to meet the June 24th, 2020 ODSA grant application deadline.
We have a motion and second for amending Ordinance 7020. Any comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay. The ordinance has been amended and read for the first time.
Thank you, President Nisley. I would now like to make a motion that we suspend the rules in order to adopt this ordinance as amended.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Smedley. Okay. So we have a motion and second for suspending the rules. All those in favor, and this is for the purposes of meeting that June 24th deadline. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The rules have been suspended, Councilmember Grace.
Thank you. Now I would like to make a motion that we adopt Ordinance 7020.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Fall. Okay. All right, we have a motion and second for approval of this ordinance. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 7120 is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise and accept bids for construction of a wastewater treatment plant dewatering improvements project number 320, introduced by Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Nisley. I would like to make a motion that we adopt Ordinance 7120.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Clodfelter. Okay.
Thank you. This ordinance is authorizing the funding for the dewatering project and for the Service Safety Director to advertise and accept bids for this program or project, rather.
We have a motion and second for approval of 7120. Any comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Nay. Okay, opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 7220 is an ordinance authorizing design engineering of the city sewer systems improvement project number 330, introduced by Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Nisley. And I would like to make a motion that we adopt Ordinance 7220.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Clodfelter.
Thank you. This is for the design engineering of city sewer system improvements, and the city was eligible for a 0% EPA DEFA loan, and this is the project we talked about in committee, and we're up for third reading.
Okay. We have a motion and second for approval. Any comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Did you have a question, Member Reisner?
Yes, I did. Could you remind me the total cost of the project?
Sure. Yeah, I was. This is the 0% loan is $1,156,604.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's the 2020 appropriation ordinance is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the sum of $1,160,653 to Sewer Fund 750-637 TC 500 and increasing total appropriations by said amount.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. We're ready for the vote then. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 7320 is an ordinance amending Ordinance 13919, authorizing construction and construction engineering services and property acquisition for the Kimes Reservoir Project number 324. And this is introduced by Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Nisley. I would like to make a motion that we adopt Ordinance 7320.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Clodfelter. Okay.
And this ordinance is it's easiest if I just read it. Relocate the Kimes Water Booster Station approximately 50 feet lower in elevation in order to serve a larger area to the south and west of the city and to allow for replacement of the Blackburn tank should future growth require it. And this ordinance authorizes the Service Safety Director to advertise and accept bids and enter into contracts with the lowest and best bidder for construction engineering services and property acquisition for the Kimes Reservoir Project. And the Service Safety Director is authorized to expend up to $1,168,450 for this project.
Okay. We have a motion and second. Are there any comments or questions? All right. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 7420 is an ordinance affirming the City of Athens will pick up the statutorily required contribution to the Ohio Public Employees Retirement System for the employees of AFSCME Local 2403 pursuant to Internal Revenue Code Section 414H2, introduced by Councilmember Crowe.
Thank you, President Nisley. I'd like to make a motion to approve or adopt 07420.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Clodfelter.
Thank you. And I'll just remind council and the public that this was brought to our attention by the IRS by OPERS. Need this in our, in order to be compliant with the Internal Revenue Code, we need this on our books. And I'll just read the pertinent sections here. Whereas pursuant to federal and Ohio laws, the federal and state income taxes on a portion of the wages or salaries of the employees of AFSCME Local 2403 will be deferred if the City of Athens picks up the contributions statutorily required to be made by such elected officials and covered employees to OPERS. And whereas the City of Athens will not incur any additional costs in the picking up of such contributions, be it ordained by the Council of the City of Athens, Section 1, the full amount of the statutorily required employee contributions to OPERS shall be withheld from the gross pay of each person within any of the classes established in Section 2 herein and shall be picked up by the City of Athens. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and second for approval of this ordinance. Are there any comments or questions? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, the motion carries and the ordinance is approved. We now have 4 ordinances for second reading, and it's a bit unusual tonight in that we're needing to suspend these, the rules for these ordinances so that they can be passed and on their way to being approved ordinances before the council goes on their recess for the month of July. So these next ones will have moves to suspend each of them before we approve them. Ordinance 7820 is an ordinance amending the 2020 appropriation ordinance and is introduced by Councilmember Crowe.
Thank you, President Nisley. I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules for 07820.
Second.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to adopt 07820.
We'll vote first. Motion and second for suspending the rules. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The rules have been suspended. Councilmember Crowe.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to adopt 07820.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Grace. Okay.
Thank you. This appropriation ordinance deals with sort of three items. Two are lumped together as court grants for security technology that were received by the municipal court. And the other item is the decreasing and increasing of auditor funds for the purchase of a tabletop scanner.
Okay. So we have a motion and second for approval of this ordinance. I think we have a question. Councilmember Fall.
Great. Thank you. This particular one, when it was brought up in committee, talked about having one of the grants is for a taser. And I must admit that I'm very ambivalent about this sort of thing, especially when tasers are introduced into discussion about being non-lethal. And we know that that's not necessarily true. So I just would like to bring that up. I know that the grant was written quite a while ago. I just want to put the score, out there and have people think about that and some of the other issues that have to do with, the police and the the BLM. Thank you.
Councilmember Grace.
Just to respond to that briefly, our municipal court has a little bit different setup than the vast majority of municipal courts in the state, in that there is no security in terms of like a secured entrance. There's nowhere to put a metal detector or anything and still have the building accessible to the public. So currently, there's one part-time officer who does carry a weapon. No one else has any sort of weapon at all. And because there's no way to install any security access for the court, which is something that the Supreme Court of Ohio strongly recommends that all municipal courts have, is some way of securing their entrance. This is something that could provide a bit of security if there was a problem, which there hasn't been in years. But we've also, not too long ago, a municipal judge in a county not far from here was shot. And so this is, I'm a little bit personally impacted by this this particular issue, but this is not something that the judge asked for. It's something that a grant that the staff applied for, just because there is no security for the courtroom in terms of a security entrance. So no one is searched or anything before they enter the building, and sometimes tension can get high, and they've had people try to flee, and so that's just for a little bit of background relative to other court settings. This court does not have any means of screening individuals prior to their entrance into the court, and so this sort of helps to reassure the Supreme Court that they're doing something to ensure the safety of the court employees and also other people who are before the court when they don't have that security entrance.
Thank you. And yes, Councilmember Crowell. Yes.
That's very interesting information, Member Grace. And I think that those are two different issues. And so I would hope that the municipal court can continue to look at a way to make their court safer for the employees and for the citizens that are there. Whether a bailiff or a member of the court staff has a taser obviously is not going to stop somebody who might have a more powerful weapon. And so I would hope that we can move forward on making the court safer. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for the comments and questions. All right, we have a motion and second for approval of this ordinance 7820. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 7920 is an ordinance authorizing the payment of a prior year expense and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley. I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules for 7920.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Smedley. Okay. And so we have a motion and second for suspending the rules for the reason given at the beginning of all of these readings. We are needing to pass them to get them taken care of before recess. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The rules have been suspended. Councilmember Crowe.
Thank you, President Isley. This is a prior year expense over $3,000, which is why it needs an ordinance. And this ordinance authorizes the auditor to expend $5,317.50 from Recreation Fund 270, Transaction Code 500, to complete the payment for the new solar canopy personal device charging stations, which hopefully when COVID is over, we will all get to use often. Thank you, President Isley. I'd like to make a motion to approve 07920.
Thank you. And seconded by Councilmember Clodfelter, or was that a question you had, Council?
That was a second. Thank you.
Okay.
I couldn't unmute fast enough.
Okay. So we have a motion and second. Any comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, the motion carries and the ordinance is approved. And our Ordinance 8120 is an ordinance accepting a certificate of registration from the Zayo Group LLC for use of the city's right-of-way, introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. I'd like to suspend the rules this evening for all the reasons that has been talked about.
Second.
Thank you.
Second by Councilmember Clodfelter. Okay. We have a motion for suspending the rules. All those in motion and second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The rules have been suspended. Councilmember Fall.
Great. I would like to adopt Ordinance 8120.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Reisner.
Great. And we just talked about this just last week. Review. It's for broadband development, infrastructure development that will occur within our right-of-ways. Thank you.
We have a motion and second for approval. Any comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 8220 is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an LPA state project agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation for a guardrail replacement upgrade project and declaring an emergency. It is introduced by Councilmember Kotsis.
President Isley, thank you. I would like to make a motion to suspend the rules for Ordinance 08220.
Second.
Thank you. And this is to clear the slate for our summer recess.
Okay, we have a motion and second for suspending the rules. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The rules have been suspended. Councilmember Kotsis.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to make a motion to adopt Ordinance 08220.
Second. Seconded by Crowell.
Thank you. And this is so ODOT can do some guardrail replacements on US 33. And this is between the two, actually US 33 and US 50 at that point, because it's between the 682 interchange ramps. The bid will go out sometime in October. Of course, that doesn't matter to us because ODOT will assume 100% of the cost of this project.
Okay. So we have a motion and second for approving 8220. Any questions or comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. We'll now move on to a one reading resolution, Resolution 1020. This is a resolution by the City of Athens, Ohio, to declare racism a public health crisis and in support of Senate Concurrent Resolution 14, declaring racism a public health crisis in the state of Ohio, and is introduced by Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Nisley. And I would like to make a motion that we adopt this resolution, but I will read the entirety of the resolution. It is a bit long. I apologize. There was a lot of information that I felt was important to include.
I'll second her motion.
Okay.
Thank you, Member Fall.
Seconded by Councilmember Fall.
Whereas the American Medical Association states that racism contributes to health inequities in the United States, and whereas the American Public Health Association has expressed that racism is a driving force of the social determinants of health, the social and material factors that influence health outcomes, due to the resulting inequalities in a number of matters, including housing, education, and employment. And whereas the American Public Health Association clarifies that racism is a social system with multiple dimensions. Individual racism is internalized or interpersonal. Systemic racism is institutional or structural, and is a system of structuring opportunity and assigning value based on the social interpretation of how one looks. This system unfairly disadvantages specific individuals and communities, while unfairly giving advantages to other individuals and communities. And whereas almost all of the 400 years of Black Americans' experience was under slavery and Jim Crow laws, which subjected Black people to hardship and disadvantage in all areas of life. And whereas the Health Policy Institute of Ohio explains that negative repercussions of historical racism, including but not limited to discriminatory lending practices of the 20th century, known as redlining, impact current outcomes regarding access to nutritious food, economic security, educational achievement, and infant mortality. And whereas the American Psychological Association says that because of poverty and discrimination, racial minority children are more likely to experience traumatic events than white children, and that childhood trauma has negative impacts on academic, behavioral, and physical health outcomes. And whereas the Ohio Poverty Report, published by the Ohio Development Services Agency, shows that the poverty rate for Black Ohioans is more than twice the poverty rate for white Ohioans, and the median income for Black households is only 60% of the statewide median. And whereas the Urban Institute reports that 56% of youth incarcerated in Ohio are Black, despite representing only 16% of people in Ohio under the age of 18. And whereas data collected by the Ohio Department of Health reveal that both infant and maternal mortality is more than 2.5 times greater for Blacks in Ohio than whites, and that Black women are significantly more likely to experience severe maternal morbidity. And whereas the Ohio Department of Health and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention data indicate that Black Ohioans have higher mortality rates for COVID-19, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and cancer compared to all other racial groups. And whereas the Health Policy Institute of Ohio reports that life expectancy for Black Ohioans is almost 4 years below the life expectancy for Ohioans as a whole. And whereas the American Public Health Association has identified law enforcement violence as a public health issue that disproportionately affects marginalized groups, including people of color, impacting both physical and mental health outcomes. And whereas the impact of racism on public health deserves action from all levels of government. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Athens, Ohio. Section 1. The Council of the City of Athens, Ohio, does hereby declare racism to be a public health crisis affecting our city, county, and the entire state. Section 2. We, the members of Athens City Council, ask the mayor to establish a working group to promote racial equity throughout the city and to promote community engagement and provide tools for city departments to engage actively and authentically with communities of color. Continue to work to build alliances with organizations that have a legacy and track record of confronting racism, encourage community partners and stakeholders in the education, employment, housing, and criminal justice and safety arenas to recognize racism as a public health crisis and take appropriate action. Continue to promote racially equitable economic and workforce development. Continue to promote racially equitable hiring and promotion of all employees. Provide training to all elected officials, employees, and staff on workplace biases and how to mitigate them. Support local, state, regional, and federal initiatives that advance efforts to dismantle systemic racism and mitigate exposure to adverse childhood experiences and trauma. Incorporate educational efforts to address and dismantle racism and to expand understanding of racism and how racism affects individual and population health, and secure adequate resources to successfully accomplish the aforementioned activities. Section 3, Athens City Council is committed to a review of all portions of the Athens City Code with a racial equity lens and conducting all human resources, vendor selection, and grant management activities with a racial equity lens, including reviewing all internal policies and practices such as hiring, promotion, leadership appointments, and funding. Section 4, Athens City Council urges the Ohio State Legislature and Governor DeWine to act promptly to adopt Senate Concurrent Resolution 14, declaring racism a public health crisis in the state of Ohio. And Section 5, the Clerk of Council is hereby directed to send a copy of this resolution to Governor DeWine, State Senators Hoagland, Craig, Williams, Thomas, Antonio, Maharath, Shuring, Sykes, Feder, and Yuko, and Ohio House Speaker Householder and State Representative Edwards.
Okay. So we have a motion and second. Councilmember Smedley.
Here, here. Very well done. It was long, but it was good stuff. I really appreciate the time and effort you put into that. I had two things I wanted to bring up. I wonder, this is more of a technical formatting comment or question. Would we be open to capitalizing the word Black? The distinction being Black is a color. Black, the color is lowercase, Black uppercase is referring to a person.
Yes. I think, could we do that as a typographical correction?
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. I intended to do that. Thank you for pointing.
No, and I apologize for not getting that feedback to you sooner. And then the other, I appreciated all the action items that are there as well. And hopefully this is more a comment, our Community Relations Commission can find a way to help move this forward too. Yeah, again, appreciate your work. Thank you.
Thank you. And just a note, all the senators that I listed other than our own Senator Hoagland, I listed because they are the sponsors of the Senate resolution. And I think that it's nice for our elected officials to hear from constituents throughout the state or throughout where that they are in support of action that they're working on. So that's why I included the long list of senators.
Okay. Yes, Mayor Patterson.
I have a question, and just to get some clarity on this, is this a 3-reading resolution that is being suspended this evening, or a 1-reading resolution that is just going through this first reading?
Just 1 reading.
Okay, my reason for asking the question is that in your therefores, there are several action items in there that need to be addressed. So, thank you.
I think we can say that council is urging and suggesting.
Yes, we're asking. Yes, that was definitely thought about, and I understand the point, but as it's not a. I feel asking the mayor to do this is something different than ordering, I guess, is that, if that makes sense, that, and I appreciate Member Smedley's comment as far as the public relations. And I think that this, to me, this seems like something that could be built, perhaps we have members of a few different existing commissions that would come together to serve, perhaps, hopefully with some new members. But this is something that, if I would love to sit down and talk about specifics, but then if we want to have a future ordinance spelling out the specifics of a new council or commission, but this was it was important to me to say something in regards to this public health issue, and so I wanted to go ahead and work on this prior to our recess.
Mayor Patterson.
I think this is great. And so what you just said to me at least gives me a little better idea of timeline as to how to go about forming this. And Councilmember Grace, I would love to work with you on pulling different existing boards or commissions together, because I think that would make for the best foundation for this. I'm thinking of the Police Advisory Council. I'm also thinking affordable housing. I'm also thinking the community relations. So we can certainly pull together, I believe, a good task force to really tackle these very important issues that you've brought forward. So thank you. Thank you for working on that. I apologize for just having read it for the first time this evening. So, but I'm supportive.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, we have motion and second for approval. Resolution 1020. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. And the motion carries and the resolution is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Smedley, seconded by Grace. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. All right. The meeting's adjourned at 7:38 p.m. and we'll see you all in August. Thank
Have a
you.
good July, everybody.
Bye.